Carbon Cap is an environmental asset management firm whose mission is to raise awareness of climate change and produce solutions directly related to capping and reducing emissions.
You talked about, putting a price on carbon and making that actually an asset for trading. Do you believe that will be the way to help us sort of try and finance our way out of this?
I think that the climate crisis is now at a point where we need to pull every available policy lever. We believe that one of the most important policy levers is putting a price on carbon emissions. We must price them. Why? Because we live in, as you said, a market-based economy, and a market-based economy respects supply, demand, and price. So we have to put a price on emissions because it has real damage, and the higher the price, it means emitters will look at low-carbon methodologies to go about their daily business. So pricing carbon is crucial to get emissions down. And since the emissions trading system in Europe came into force in 2005, emissions in Europe are down 1 billion tons per year, of which about 700 million tons is directly by the covered entities in that emission trading system. So carbon pricing in Europe has been successful, and it's now proliferating and spreading around the globe.
I assume you believe in a market economy. Some people probably don't. There's a big tussle here in the UK about whether we have a choice of government coming up which believes in state control. And in other parts of the world, it is still a state system. You talked about levers. To make this happen, is this really about state, or you think the market is the solution?
Well, I think the two work hand in hand. I think that I think as a student of history, of economic history, I would put forward a very strong argument that a free market system and capitalism in general have lifted, perhaps 1.5 or 2 billion people out of poverty. I think that the burning of fossil fuels over the last 200 years has also been a big contribution, medical science advances. So I think entrepreneurship and the invisible hand of the market, there's no question it is the most efficient way to allocate scarce resources, capital and labor. And therefore putting a price on carbon emissions, which have a negative, damaging economic impact, has to be one of the best ways to get a market-based economy to respond
but
to
should that price be put by governments, do you think, or do you think that should be left to the market?
So
it's the interference question.
Yeah. So there are two different approaches to carbon pricing. I mean, next year when China launches their national emission trading system, will be the biggest carbon market in the world, covering 3.3 billion tons. That will allow the market to price emissions. So they will establish a cap on emissions, and then the market will trade and establish a market price. As I mentioned, it's spreading. That mechanism is spreading around the world, but by no means is that the only way to price carbon. The other way is a carbon tax. Carbon taxes are also spreading around the world. Unfortunately, I think Macron in France tried to implement a carbon tax and had a very negative reaction by the populace there. So we would favor a cap and trade, but as I said, we need to pull every lever in terms of helping the climate crisis.